Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Jackie Ma. And today it's just me, which feels really good because I just came off of like a 3-day training. I'm tired. So I just wanted to share a little bit with you today and honor my audience and my commitment. Today, I want to talk about diversity of thought and community. So it should be a brief one. But first, I want to say that diversity of thought is really important. It can be really uncomfortable when people don't agree with you. And, you know, walking a spiritual path is essentially consistently debunking belief systems and opening up spaces for greater inner authority, right? Coming back into connection with the truth of whoever that source is for you. And so I can really understand how, for me personally, I could have believed and thought something all the way over here. And then a couple of years later, sometimes a couple of weeks, I'm at a whole other perspective because I have chiseled away the infrastructure and the beliefs that were holding in place this energetic, the distortions, the conditioning that comes through like our family of origins, through our school systems, through religious systems. And so everything that we've been taught, like even around who God is or religion, everything is essentially conditioned until you're able to reach the place inside where you're like, no, I know this voice. Like I can trust this thing inside of me. So when I'm speaking about diversity of thought, one, it's important. It's like a percentage of the population is holding a polarity, and the other percentage is holding a polarity. And somehow these two work together to create enough tension for folks to grow. And it can be really intense. And, we see in family units, I see in my own family unit, we coexist and love each other deeply, and yet none of us are carrying the same beliefs and energy. Like my mother's generation, my generation, me and my son may be closer, but we are closer in our because our consciousness is different. But there is still a lot of pervasive illusions, and we see consciousness keep expanding and growing, and each one of us has our own um, experience that we've come here to transmute, to fulfill, to rise through. It's like a rose rising through the concrete. And so it's like shattering all the illusions in the darkness so that we can truly receive the inheritance of who we are, the beauty that we are, and be in relationship with that versus being in consistent dancing with other people's ideas of what that relationship is. So, with that said, there's about 85% of the population who is incongruency of a group think, and there's about 10-15% of other folks that in this day and age are, which have always been called like the heretics, um, the rebels, whatever they are, or the more conscious beings, whatever it is that you believe. Regardless, it's just, I think it's a progression of experience and so forth. And both are really important. Not easy to, not always easy to embrace. And I'll give you an example of why that can be really challenging. So, for me personally, if I'm growing out of something, if I'm growing out of an ego structure, a mold, something that I believed was true my whole life, either because my conditioning was so intense I couldn't see the grass on the other side, or which is generally the case, or I knew it was wrong, but I continued to believe in it because I was afraid to not believe in what the people I loved believed in for fear of my own safety, my survival, and so forth, which is most of what the world does, right? So a lot of times we're living in an illusion, we place ourselves in, we lie to ourselves so that we don't have to grow, so that we can stay safe, because we just have no idea what's on the other side of this. Yeah, I need to just breathe into that because it's so challenging. And when we decide, when the pressure is big enough inside of us where that evolution is like, nope, I cannot stay a bud any longer. That that spiritual pressure starts to compound, right? It's, some of us also call it you build the muscle. And then there's enough resistance, enough restriction, and then you just explode out of that paradigm, so to speak. Um, and when you part with yourself and you are ready to grow and to become a different iteration or version of yourself, which is more true to yourself, right? Because it's not as conditioned or it's not conditioned at all. Um, Oftentimes, the confines and the people that we were ingrained in our community or our family system with, the relationships all have to shift because we were bonded by our belief systems oftentimes. And if the heart changes and the ideas change, you might not find that you have much in common with those beings anymore, and you might need to walk away. And that doesn't mean that you stop loving folks. Personally, I mean, I wake up, I pray and continue to pray. I'm so grateful for all the communities I've been a part of. And I have been, I tend to be in nurturing cycles of 7 to 12 years, and I'm super loyal. But the thing is to start to become more loyal to yourself than you are to others, because then you can be in true integrity with yourself and be honoring of who you are and show up in that way and demonstrate um, the heart of courage, the heart of the lion. And then you give people an opportunity, if they're in your environment, to see what you're doing, and it will offer them courage to make a decision for them to move in whatever direction fancies them. Maybe they leave the group altogether and go join the opera, who knows? But the point is, what are each one of us here to serve when we get liberated and free from this need to belong to others and come into a more individuated and defined sense of self? Now, in this world, the modern world, there's a lot of talk about individuation being whiteness. I am obviously of peach origin, but I want to call that, I want to say that that can certainly be a perspective, because this was not how our indigenous tribal brothers and sisters um, functioned, because that was not how the world was then. We had to be in our tribes, in our communities, on the land, working together to stay safe and stay alive. So this idea of that it is a white construct, I mean, essentially is true, because there's been a lot of evolution since then. The model in which the world is now operating in consciously is different. So it's up to you how you were born in, what you're here to live in. Like for me, obviously, I don't come from a tribal nation in this life, right? That's far removed from me. And that's purposeful, right? I'm here to, I'm a modern medicine woman and for these times. And so that's the thread I'm here to hold. So I can go back to the source and connect with that deep, deep power that is indigenous to my soul. However, I can visit tribal nations and work with beautiful beings, but that's not my calling in this life. Let's just be clear about that. And everybody has their own calling. So how you operate in your communities and in your world is really up to you. And there's something I want to read to you that really brought me to, this is something I think about all the time, because I'm conscious, my communities right now are much smaller. I used to be a part of a lot of very different communities. Um, and all of that is really beautiful, but I had to really move out of the spaces and friendships I was in, because more of me wanted to come alive, and there was deeper healing I needed to do. And I realized that the parts of me that were connected with so much of these communities um, was ready to heal in a different way, and experience myself not through the lens of who I was with them, but who am I? Who am I without it? Um, Not easy stuff. I will say that. Um, so let me just find it. And again, there is a nuance of perspective. So you might be like, I don't agree with that at all, and that's okay. But for me, and looking at the world, if you are not individuated, if you do not aspire to break through the walls and to liberate yourself and to be conscious and to walk your own unique path with God, there's no way you can find a community that is going to truly, truly see you for who you are, honor you for who you are, and not expect you to get on board with whatever it is they are believing. This also brings me to circles of women. Like the idea of having no hierarchy is a beautiful thing. We do not live in that world. And so I am so grateful to sit in the circle. Every woman, every man, everybody is a part of the circle of life. But there is somebody always leading the circle. If the circle is to have order, if the circle is to have structure, because we're in form. So I find that we have to be aware of that. So it's, yes, moving away from hierarchies for sure. But if there's incredibly conscious beings coming together and they are able to have their own thoughts, their own views, and share, they actually move into, I don't know, we actually could say that it's a real democracy. um, and we can create, we can solve world problems in that way. And I know we're not seeing that in our politics, right? We're not seeing that in our government, but because it's not, it's kind of rigged not to do that. But for those that are rising above these infrastructures and saying, that's bullshit, these people don't have my highest good, you start to come into a greater sense of sovereignty, which is really challenging, not for the faint of heart, to be that 15% and be like, what is the truth? What is the truth here? Something feels wrong, something feels off, something feels off here. And so let me just read this to you. It's from Bao's, how do I say that? Bao Housewife. Um, I think her real name is Yolanda. I like her. I can understand why a lot of people don't, because she speaks her mind and she does not care. And so what she says here is, you can find her on Instagram. I really like the consciousness that she's plugged into, and we have a lot of similarities as far as the way in which we are perceiving realities. Um, and I want to say, if I'm honest, I really can understand why people feel like, oh, they can relax when other people have the same sort of ideas as them. Because then it's like you get to dream into possibilities together, to unite forces to do something really good. And I think that that's like the benefit of community before it gets distorted or manipulated and used by darker energies, Watiko, to like take over the minds and souls of people, because that's a real thing. The 85% have to really be mindful about that and be vigilant, because that's what's happening. But this idea of like, there was a time, and still there still is a time when I try to change my mother's mind because I love her so much. But really, I'm just mad because here I have done the work to move out of the belief that she's still holding, and yet I have to be in relationship with her while she's continuing to hold this, and create compassion for myself, generate compassion for the fact that I adhered to this conditioning, and also have compassion for the conditioning she is still choosing to carry. And who's to say that mine is right? It's right for me, but clearly she's not on board. And her even creating this polarization, and me and her being in the same place, and me loving her enough to love her beyond the belief system. I mean, that's the great work of our times, right? But also not to be infected by her belief system any longer, right? And that can be really, really scary for us once we move out of spaces where we are no longer in the cults and the dynamics and the ideas that enslaved us, to continue to be in spaces where people are still operating in that energetic. It's oftentimes we have to go. And P.S., I'm not a fan of like abandon everything because you're a spiritual person and leave everything. I mean, if that's what you need to do for a time, I had to do it for a time. But I don't, I believe that we can be in the world, that we truly can be who we are and be in the world. It's just that we have to heal and make these adjustments and re enter the world on our own terms and create the world around us, right? We bring in new people, we bring in new energy inside of ourselves. So we start to cultivate new relationships, new partnerships come. Our family dynamic shifts. And yeah, there's more sovereignty now. So we're going to make some shifts. But it's not going to be by me dominating you that the shift is made. It's because the internal shift has already taken place that I no longer am going to adhere to the victim dynamic that was perpetuated before this. Like, I'm not going to get down. And if it means I need to leave the dinner table that day and everybody needs to kind of make new agreements, then that's going to be how we're going to have to roll. But let me read this to you. She says, "It does not take a village to raise a child." And how many times have I said that? Like coming up, it was like the African proverb, and it is wisdom for some people because we were once raising our children in communities for survival. It's the only thing we knew, and it's beautiful. And people are still doing that. Some people are still having this dynamic experience in their communities, and that is theirs to have. But in the modern world, it's not as easy to do that. We see the dysfunction and the breeding ground that is created oftentimes when people are not conscious and stay submissive in communities and don't fulfill their own inner calling to know themselves and to come to their own sense of um, decision to experience divinity in their own way. So she says this is communitarian propaganda. I love that. I love the idea of communitarian propaganda because it's all over the place. Raising a healthy child takes a parent with strong boundaries, integrity, discernment, and the courage to protect the child from the corruption of the village, thereby imbuing in them groundedness, self responsibility, and individuation while remaining part of the world and in right relationship with others. In other words, always understand that everything around you, and including you, is don't have to submit to it or trust it. You can co-create and be aware of the full diversity of humans and that not everybody's in integrity all the time. Now listen to this. Authentic community can only arise among humans who are differentiated enough to retain the capacity to think independently of the group. Let's read that again. Authentic community can only arise among humans who are differentiated enough to retain the capacity to think independently of the group. I couldn't agree more. As I said, now it's a whole different ballgame for me. Even though I was pretty lucky coming up because of my archetype and what I carry, I've always been able to speak my truth in communities. But I noticed that when I went into spiritual communities, that was more rigid, even though these were not religious communities, they were spiritual communities. But they're still like, there's still rules. You might not see them, but they're there because if you step out of line, you will know about it, right? You will feel that pressure. But when we go into communities and we adopt other people's language and we become one in like a homogeneous spell, we become spellbound into a group think. Even if it's more liberated than the last one, if we haven't healed it and we bring it into the next house, this is why you also see so many people in these, and I say this with love, it's not that I'm judging, but this is why you see so many people moving into spiritual communities and blaming spiritual teachers. And I mean, they already held that submissive and oppressive ideology inside of them, and they just moved it from their families of origin, from their communities into a spiritual house where when God's involved, it's much more intense. The belief systems are more intense. It's like more at the core for us to be submissive, give our power away. And we blame others, but the truth is, we tangoed. And so we have to be really, really loving and responsible with ourselves and honest about what we continue to agree to. And what are we like? Nope, I do not consent anymore. That's where we make power moves. So, as she says here, individuation, it's everything. If you don't know who you are, you can't stand up in your community. And I have to say, I'm really, really blessed right now, even when my body's uncomfortable about it. Like, I can be in conversations with some of the women in my community. They're my friends, they're my people. And I want to be challenged. I'm a strong alpha female. And I really appreciate one, that those people feel safe enough in themselves to speak up to somebody like me, and that those people feel a trust in me, that they feel safe to speak up, right? So it's how we're operating in our dynamics, that when we speak the truth, we feel safe enough to know that there's enough love there to hold the container, that like that's a relationship, that's a relating I want to be a part of, where I can be like, nope, I don't like that. That's not true at all. Or when somebody opposes me, and then I have to be with that and breathe for a minute. And the important thing is, which has been a big, big learning, is can I hold my own truth while listening to the truths of others, and be curious about and honor their views. And I can make a decision whether or not it's of value to me to shift my perspective because they bring something new, or completely not, right? Like that, where there's no codependency, where I'm able to fully, fully stay and say, wow, I can really see that. I can see that perspective. That's in the quantum with me. Like your perspective. I think it was Guru Jagat who says it's like a Rubik's cube. I mean, there's like a million different ways to view something. So it's not rigid, it's not fixed, and my view will keep changing. But it's like ideas like abortion. A long time ago, I was pro-abortion. And now it's not that I'm anti-abortion, but I have a whole different lens, and I'm not so down with abortion. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to love my women and support them post, pre, whatever. It just means I had an awakening around my own, and now I have a whole different view. So nothing is fixed. We don't have to be fixed as humans, right? It's like fitting us into these binaries of blue and red and different races and genders, and like all that shit is propaganda. I want to be free. And I certainly don't consent to complying with this narrative that uses, misleads, and distorts our ideas and our free will, um, to people please, be codependent, um, the marching and the movements that are happening. Like, fuck no. I don't want anything to do with any of that. I don't need to feel important. And to, yeah, I, everything changes. Something changes inside of us. So, anyway, I don't know where I went with this, but the reality is communities have been, of course, really important for our survival. And now we're in a whole new, different world. And the world is really using all of our wounds of like belonging, especially now that with COVID, like this scarcity and fear, there's so much that has brought up um, this state of survival in humanity that further feeds this ideology of like you need to belong to something instead of you need to belong to yourself, and then you can truly belong, because then you belong to you belong to the source and your creator, and then you have a backbone, you have a spine, and you're able to navigate the world with a whole different perspective. So whatever your choice is, like for me, I'm calling in a partner. So I know that a partner for me, no matter what, has to be an expansive being, right? Because in order for our hearts to rest together, there needs to be this deep understanding. We need to be in the 15%. Like, I'm obviously not going to be dating the 85%. Um, and that's a decision to cultivate loyalty to myself and to what it is I've come here to fulfill. And everybody has a right to do and experience what they're experiencing, but understand, even though it has a right to exist, doesn't mean that it's for you. Use it to show you what's not for you, and use it to be your guiding post of like, this way, that way. And even when people that you love, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this like over the past 3 years, like watching the wide array of programming that is inside of each one of us humans. I mean, Holy shit, the level of compassion we need to bring forward for ourselves and one another, it's profound. And also, it is the most important time to be able to level up and be like, I have I have to truly initiate boundaries within myself, not control, dominate, manipulate others and like sanction folks. That's what we do when we don't have power yet. But when we actually have power from within and we make the shifts inside, then we're able to just present energetically and be like, nope. Yes. And our energy field is the one that's doing most of the speaking. So when something is off, you're like, wow, what part of me just kind of played with that? Like, we're not going to do that again. Let's evolve that. So yeah, so community, I'm like, I'm kind of on the fence. I need to transform that word for myself because it's so misleading and it's being used. Like now it's like, be a part of our community, the bank. Come join our community real estate. Come, like everything is like, we're going to use that word. So wherever you feel like you don't belong and you're a lost, lonely child, you have a place here. It's sadistic oftentimes, and it's a way of using the psyches of humans that have not yet individuated. So, my message: individuate, go on the journey, initiate, find your soil, listen to your own truth, kind of disconnect for a while from the outside world and just come in and establish a relationship between you and your God and love yourself. It's the journey. And remember, you don't have to participate in anything that you don't really want to participate in. And it doesn't mean that you are suffering from whiteness. It doesn't mean like all these counter ideas, although again, there's like a small bit of truth, but it can be manipulated and inverted to make you believe that you should be doing something or shouldn't be doing something based on a thing. And it's just like, what's the truth? Everything in this illusion is upside down. What is the truth for you? Who do you truly relax with and feel safe with? Who truly can challenge you in a way that is honoring of you and helps you to grow? Who expects you to be who you are and will not settle for being in a relationship with you if you are not honoring yourself? And being able, that even means playing with our egos. Like there are people in my life that are like, if a part of me is speaking, I might allow that part of me to speak, but then I have to realize that part of me is a shadow. Oh, we're going to go into one more thing before I close out. Let's quickly talk about the distortion of the shadow. In this society, in this day and age, we are seeing like an onslaught of shadow expression. Understand something. Again, this is my own perspective. Expression is the most beautiful thing when it is natural, when it is true, when it is honoring. But expressing shadow and hurt and venom can be very problematic. So, for those spiritual people who have been inverted with the idea, I was one of them, that like in order for women to have this full sense of expression, that we had the right to, exploit ourselves, be over promiscuous. It is our right, but it's what wolf are you feeding for real? Um, and it's my understanding, like I have watched this happen in the feminist communities and in our living world. It's like that it's okay for our children, our inner children, to express themselves in, once we are aware of them, like give them room for that. No. That's not healthy, and it's not sound, and it's not safe. What these parts of us actually want is to be taken in and to be loved, not to continue to openly cause harm to ourselves or others. It's like, how do you make a decision? If you might have your inner whore, right? And we know that if you allow the inner whore full expression, one is, what is she bringing into her? How is she cultivating energy? All the things, right? It's not a moral issue. I mean, it is morally. It's that you want to love her enough so that the behaviors and the feelings that she's expressing that have been repressed get to be brought to the light, and that she gets to be her full expression of her sexuality without it being dark distorted and being misused by energies that would funnel through her and use her in the world, right? So it's our job as mothers of ourselves, as caretakers of ourselves, to acknowledge, oh shit, like I see this about myself. Wow, okay, let me bring that in now. Whoa, I didn't see that. I had that blind spot, but it's ready to heal because I'm able to see it now. And that doesn't mean I go and let my inner child, like, and my inner teenager run my relationships with my partners. Like, that would not be no bueno. Okay. Um, in the same way that if women do that, we have to interrupt these ways where we prostitute ourselves as a means of healing. It's bullshit, y'all. It's bullshit. What these parts need is our love and care. They need that inner mother to be like, "Oh, come here, ma. I can see why you did that. Wow, you learned that from this and you did this and you created this. You don't have to do that to receive my love. Now, the love is here now. It's solid. Come home to me." And that's how we heal. But you see this play out in communities, like this group spirit of rebellion and this shadow principle that of harm and victimization arises inside community structures. Then that shit is like, whoa. So you have to be really, really honest with yourself, what you are submitting to, what are the contracts, the subtleties inside of your communities. And just the bottom line is to avoid all that, which you can't avoid it. Get sovereign, right? Like just continue the journey every day of being willing to learn, getting the knees dirty, getting back up again. Like this is, it's an art at this point. It's an art. So it's not really okay to let your shadow, like, I'm going to explore that. I see teachers, spiritual teachers doing this. I'm like, whoa. And there were points in time where I did something similar. So again, a lot of compassion, and then you learn the lessons and you're like, nope, not doing that anymore. And here's why, ladies. Um, yeah, because if you're going to let your inner whore express herself in a way that isn't safe for her, then you're also going to allow your inner judge, your inner murderer. Like we carry a lot of stuff inside of us. People want to deny a lot of what's happening inside of our human psyche, but there's a lot here. And it's not us, but we're responsible for what's here. And we're responsible how it plays out in our relationships, in our communities. And it's honestly, it's a lot of hard work. And it takes a lot of work to do the individuation process. So let's do it because we're here for it. I don't know that 15% will ever be more than the 15%, and if that 85 will just remain at the 85, and that's the way it's meant to be. But I can't concern myself with that. I have to concern myself with my own journey. What is my own destiny? Who is it that comes to me? Who does the divine send to me? It's me and those people, right? That those people become my community. Um, it's me and those that we see that there are divine reasons that we're brought together, whether it's to heal, whether it's to grow, whether it's to shake one another up, all the things. But how can we be respectful of the full nuance of diverse perspective and also have very, very clear boundaries and love ourselves enough to say, hell no, I won't go. And if it means I have to break my heart a little bit and move away from people who have been like family to me, which I have had to do many times over, but I know it's divine precision for me. Like you can still love people and grow out of relationships, out of friendships, out of communities. Okay, that's all. Ciao, ciao. Have a great day. I hope this was helpful for you.